on the virtual open house. So a lot of people are looking at the plan. We're not getting a lot of comments, which is not unusual for a long-range transportation plan. But again, we would like to just make sure people are reading about it and sharing any concerns that they have. So with that, if you can advance to the next slide, Holly. Today, what we're going to talk about is really just the highlights of the long-range transportation plan, the goals, the policies, and the actions. We really want to hear from you. I would rather not talk much at all, which I know some of you find hard to believe, but it's true. So we're going to give you lots of time to provide comment. And again, all comments will be due October 31st. Oh, see, we already get bonus points for the ferry. Don't worry, I have aviations. We've had truck, ferry, aviations coming. So we'll get all those. So just a reminder that we really are planning for a future transportation system. There's a lot happening in the world right now. We're trying to be really forward thinking in this plan. A key component that everyone needs to remember as we're looking at this plan, and that is new for DOT a little bit, is we're proposing a family of plans. So the long-range transportation plan is really the policy direction. And some subcomponents of that policy direction are the freight plan, the resiliency improvement plan, and then the metropolitan and regional transportation plans. And then where you really get into the details, like the nitty-gritty data and lots of the details are all in the system investment plans for each of the different modes. And then you kind of get more into the financial and operating plans, and then you get into plans that start talking about tracking performance. Are we implementing all of the things that were suggested? So just a reminder that the statewide long-range transportation is really high level. This is the policy. The intent then is taking these policies, you go into each of the modes and get into more detail. Just a reminder of who's had input on this plan. We have had over 2,500. We had everyone in the state plus some neighbors commenting. We've had over 2,500 Alaskans share their thoughts. We've had 3 public outreach events. We've had 6 freight advisory committees, 3 statewide transportation committees, 2 joint meetings, some technical advisory committee meetings, 3 of those on scenario planning. We've done well over 15 mode-specific interviews, many of them with you, and we've done about 8 other presentations. So I've really tried to get a lot of input on this. So based on that and through what's been identified by this group, kind of the drivers of change, what really helped identify the goals, the policies, and the actions were workforce. We're hearing it nationwide. It's hard to find qualified workforces. The world is changing. We've got more data. We've got new kinds of technology. So how workforce evolves is really going to be a driver of change. The economy, obviously, I think that's always in there. Funding needs always exceed available funding. The adoption of these new technologies, it's changing how we travel and get our goods. And climate change, I think there's no questions on that with what happened in Western Alaska and what we're seeing happening in Florida right now. So these are really kind of what our policies and actions are centered around. Not all of them, but these are kind of the big ones. So with that, we're just going to kind of go over what the goals are, what the policies and actions are. I'm not going to read these verbatim. I'll just give you a high level. And then we're going to take a pause and say, did we get it right? Do you really feel like there's anything missing? Do you have any comments or questions? So the first one is safety. Doesn't matter what mode or who you are, we want a safe system. There's a policy for vulnerable road users, pedestrians, and bicyclists, and even off-road vehicle users. We want to reduce fatalities and serious injuries. Safe behavior and awareness. We need to educate everybody. And then safe infrastructure. So we want to not have safety corridors. We want them all to be fixed. We want to continue to invest in aviation safety and in the programs that upgrade weather reporting and navigation, complete streets, to design and improve safety for all users. And then just a safe systems approach, no matter what mode it is, that it takes more than just, you can't just fix one thing. You've got to look at the whole system. So those are the key safety policies and goals and actions. Questions, comments?
Wendy, this is Jody. I just put in the chat. Underneath this aviation safety awareness, I would call out specifically that program because the whole aviation team throughout the state has been participating with FAA in identifying priorities, identifying funding needs, all of that kind of stuff. So I would call out that name.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. I wish I could give out prizes because the people that comment, I would give a prize out to everybody. So I can't really do that. All right.
Okay.
No, go, Holly. All right. So the next one is mobility and access. And again, this is improving accessibility, safety, personal mobility, the interconnectedness to move people and goods efficiently. So one of the first things is we want equitable access for all Alaskans so that they can get their daily needs, they can meet their daily needs, get where they need to go, get their freight. So we're looking at establishing an equity advisory committee to just kind of make sure that every voice is represented. A strategic plan, again, looking more at getting everybody involved by mode, and then a continuation of the bypass mail system, unique to Alaska, but so important. And then this concept of interconnectedness, and that's filling in the gaps. First and last mile, getting to public transportation, connecting all of our different modes. So really trying to strengthen that connection between roads, airports, railways, ports, ferries, and transit terminals. And this is actually where a lot of the new IIJA funding and grants focus to, is strengthening those connections and some creative ways to leverage that funding.
Okay, so at this point, do you have any comments or do you want to discuss any items on mobility and access? Wendy has prizes.
So we are assuming that no comments means everybody's relatively happy. We've kind of got this correct. We're pretty well dialed in. We're feeling good.
Hey Wendy, this is Becca Douglas. I put this in the chat too, but it would be great to include essential air service with bypass mail because that gets the people out, not just the mail, and is a big program that's important to Alaska.
Perfect. I know we documented that, and I completely agree it should be part of this action. Thank you for pointing that out.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on.
All right, so economic vitality, we always want our transportation and economy to work together. That benefits everybody. So thinking about access to resources, making sure that DOT is working with stakeholders to understand where that need is. And then access to communities, because without good transportation, it certainly affects the economy of communities. Access to opportunities, that's jobs, core services. So again, more of these economic activity centers and tourist destinations, making sure we're addressing those as well. Can they get to Denali? Are there new places we want to get tourists to or not to? And then of course, supporting our military, which is so important in our community. And finally, a port focus of thinking about a port authority or state port authority to start to address all the ports and how they connect to the rest of the system, whether it's rail, ferries, or roads.
Wendy, this
Yes.
is Jody again. Back on the right there, access to communities. We might want to add the word tribes or tribal leaders, something like that, because oftentimes they're separate from what we think of as communities or municipalities.
Perfect.
Native populations. I don't know what the words are, but I feel like that should get added in there, because then they are also receiving separate funding.
One
So-
thing you could do is just take that one word community out and define it by saying municipal and tribal connections.
I like that. That's much more specific.
That's good.
Okay, municipal and tribal. Perfect. And I'm
Thank
not
you.
taking notes, but lots of other people are. So
Yeah, we're
we're
on.
getting it. Yep. Great suggestions. Thank you.
Okay, anything else on access to opportunities? Okay. Go ahead, Wendy.
All right, state of good repair. It makes sense to take care of what we have. So these are starting to incorporate life cycle costs. So not just what it costs to construct it, but what it costs to maintain and operate it, whether it's a modernized, expanded, or new facility. System reinvestment strategy. You know, when does it make sense to replace or move infrastructure at the end of its life? And then asset management and preservation, really linking data to asset management in project selection and scoping. And that's with the goal of reducing the need for maintenance. More on asset management, really standardize, measure, and report the practices focused on transportation infrastructure resilience. And then starting to add more digital and data to our asset management practices by leveraging new technologies. And then maintaining those assets. So kind of a lot more just on using data, technology, and reporting back. How are we doing?
Okay.
The boring. Go ahead.
State of good repair. Let's see if anybody has any input here on the policies and actions.
Good, we're rolling through. Then we can just open it up for general conversation. All right.
Resiliency.
Perfect. So I think everyone knows what resiliency is. We want to adapt and recover from climate change, natural disasters, any other disruption like pandemics that come our way. So we want a resilient agency, and that comes back to workforce, making sure the right workforce is in place today and what does it look like in the future. Updating job descriptions and positions, bringing the organizations into kind of this new world, and different ways of working. We're all working differently now as we sit on this Teams meeting, but hours, remote work, how we work with data, what does that look like? So really kind of modernizing the agency to be as resilient as possible given whatever comes forward. Obviously, we want infrastructure. So a resiliency plan, what is our infrastructure that's most at risk and how can we minimize those impacts? Thinking about that in project selection, are the projects we're choosing resilient and is resiliency built in? And then raising awareness of the Port of Alaska as where most of the goods come in and those connections of how most of the goods get dispersed, whether it's to the airport, to the railroad, or via road. And then we want to incorporate risk and resilience into planning, program, and project development, especially on those key supply routes. So again, really looking at those at-risk facilities and what we can do to make sure we understand where they are and how we can make sure that their rehabilitation and reconstruction projects are really timely and we can make them stronger.
Okay. Go ahead, Jody.
So on the prior slide, yep, I feel like there should be something in an action in here that talks about our universities and our tech centers and ways to, working them in with this resiliency plan. How do we keep our Alaskans that are young in Alaska and working for Alaska for the state.
Okay.
It's some kind of connection plan with them, some kind of collaboration to work through Department of Labor, Department of Ed, those kinds of comments. And I know this is DOT, but I feel like this is another area where we would have to drive some of the change that we want to see.
Any disagreements with that or any other comments on that from the other members? All right, assuming that, I mean, I think that makes sense. I think we can either expand on the workforce resiliency plan or we could add a new action to advocate for the new kinds of workforce that we need and how that looks at the university system and the different, yeah, I think that's a good one. Okay.
Okay. Sustainability.
All right, so sustainable, clean, and equitable transportation. This reduces costs and has social environmental benefits. So obviously lots about electric vehicles happening, a lot of money out there for electric vehicle charging. The state of Alaska just had their state plan approved. So again, preparing for these alternative fuels. I believe the alternative fuel corridors are already identified. So I don't know if we can just keep that in and feel really good about it, or if we want to update that one. There is a statewide plan that's been approved. There's still probably more work to do on that. And then innovation transportation technologies. So again, just support the conversion to electric and low or zero emission fleets and continuing to increase the number of those. And then, of course, the carbon reduction strategy. This, again, there's a lot of money in the IIJA grants for that. So we call this one out specifically to continue to work on this plan and be able to leverage some more federal funds.
So this is Katie and Juneau. On the electric vehicle charging infrastructure, I just would like to recognize that the alternative fuel corridors don't represent all of the kind of EV strategy that Alaska needs. I mean, Southeast, for example, is totally left out of that. So, I mean, if it could reference, developing different models for different communities to encourage EV adoption or something. I mean, the statewide plan also doesn't recognize some of the places off the corridor. So I'd like to acknowledge that the alternative fuel corridor is maybe not the end all be all in EV, and we need to work on plans specific to communities. And I'm sorry I'm not giving you specific language there. But I can work on that if you want me to.
No, I think that's actually a really good point, and it brings up a couple of other questions based on that. So I think we can identify additional alternative fuel corridors, and we may need a new action that looks outside of what the federal program is funding right now, which is pretty limited. So I think that's some good questions for Brian at the railroad. If there's any kind of electrification moves towards trains, I'm going to plead complete ignorance on this one, or even for equipment that is supporting the trains. And then also, I don't know if the statewide plan, I haven't had a chance to read the whole thing, if it addresses electric ferries. And so maybe there needs to be some additional actions around that. So I don't know if anyone has any comments there, if we just need to do a little more homework there.
There's
ahead,
some
Brian.
cruise ships too. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, that's okay. Jody, we'll go to Brian first and then you.
All right. Yeah. On the train side, I mean, to be honest, all of our locomotives presently are electric. They just have really large diesel engines for generating the electricity to run them. Industry-wide, there is a lot of interest and a lot of stuff being tested, trying to find ways to completely electrify without necessarily having the traditional. I'm sure you've seen, in urban areas where you have the power line that runs above the tracks and powers that way. That is stupendously costly to maintain. And so what you're seeing is a lot of testing right now on the actually battery side, similar to what you would see with a Tesla or something like that. To give you a sense of what we are dealing with, though, the best batteries available for locomotives that size right now are generally able to produce about 9 to 10 megawatt hours. Our locomotives generally right now per tank of fuel do between 100 and 150 megawatt hours worth of power. And so until we can find a way to get that battery technology forward to where we can start to get those two things to converge, we're sort of stuck. But you know, that technology is progressing very rapidly, and I know us at the railroad we're monitoring that, but you know, it feels like 5 to 10 years out at least.
Thanks, Brian. Great input.
Okay, we'll go to Jody first. Go ahead, Jody.
I don't remember what I was gonna say now. Oh, I think it was I think I was just gonna pile on to electric ferries, that there's cruise ships that are using hybrid fuel models also. So to
Okay.
include the cruising industry in that alternative fuel corridors. And then the other piece is I put in the chat, possibly we need a thing in here about sustainable waste management. I feel like out in the rurals, if we send a bunch of batteries out there, what are we going to do with them when we need new batteries? And how does that all play in our transportation plan? Not sure. Thoughts?
So could we, I think as another action would be a sustainable waste management plan. And trying to figure out what that does look like. Okay.
So
Yeah.
Todd, you had your hand up there for a hot second. Do you want to add something, or are you good?
I'm mostly good. I was just going to add, you know, in reference to the corridor, alternative fuel corridors, there's, you know, the statewide plan that's being produced by our cooperative agency. And the problem that with identifying additional corridor plans is the minimum requirements, and you can't spend that money on additional locations until you fully build out those identified corridor plans. And so it's been a while since I've been involved in any of those meetings, but it's my understanding they're reluctant to add any additional corridors because of that requirement to build them out fully. And in light of doing that, we can use the alternative fuel money in other areas rather than never reaching full build out in some of the corridors.
Yeah, that is correct, Todd. So once you build out your identified corridors, that does free up the money to do more community-based electrification. So let me rework the statewide plan and the alternative fuel corridors to align a little bit better with the legislation. Some of these were written before all the guidance was out and some of the deadlines. So we'll clean these up to align with what you said. That's a great point. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, moving on.
I'm on mute. Are we good?
Now I'm on mute. You're good.
Your leaders are falling apart, team. Sorry. All right, strategic partners. This is really all about coordination and collaboration. So really focusing and again, working closely with the MPOs. Support local planning. This is a lot of states have regional planning organizations in addition to their metropolitan planning organizations. It's just another way to not have to facilitate coordination. So you have some regional groups looking out for specific areas, and then everyone gets together and talks. It's a bit easier on for a state the size of Alaska if there were some more organizations. So starting to look at that. Understanding DOT's responsibilities, kind of sharing a little bit more transparent about all the different players in the field. Who does what, who's responsible for what are some of the metrics that are getting measured, and what do the finances look like? And it's hard for all of us sometimes to wrap our brains around who does what when we look at all the different modes. So trying to share that message out a little bit better with the public, with even some of the stakeholders, some of the tribes, so that they'll be more efficient leveraging of funds and a little more cooperation. So that's kind of the next two. And then updating the public participation plan in light of the new world. You know, we don't always have to go out to a community to get the best participation. Sometimes Teams actually is more effective. Hard to believe, but true.
Okay, just one thing Jody put in the chat was that maybe this could be, the strategic partners goal could be a place to talk about the Department of Labor or partnering with the universities.
Yeah, this might be a good spot for it. Yep.
What else? Anything else?
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Stewardship of the transportation. Address the challenges using the best and most cost-effective solutions. So understand what the capacity is of really everything, right down from the capacity of each of the modes, as well as the maintenance facilities. You know, where do we really stand and what really needs to be done? So a comprehensive inventory, and then from there, identify minimal levels of service. That way, if some mode isn't achieving that minimal level of service, can prioritize funds to get them there. So really trying to hone in on where money should be most effectively spent. Efficient freight movement. This is really so much freight's light in this plan because we have the whole freight plan, but you do have to kind of mention it, but always focusing on getting goods and services where they need to go. And then airspace protection and management. Probably this applies, if anywhere, it applies to where we have larger communities. We want to make sure that land use housing doesn't encroach on that airspace management. And then also, I think it comes back to some of the drones and some of the new technologies, making sure that those airspaces are protected.
Jody, go ahead. It seems like you've done your homework.
I just talk a lot. So I think either in here or in the spot, yeah, either in the stewardship or in the responsibilities, we should have something in here about workforce management to make sure that we have people that can actually keep the system working, that we're actively managing DOT's workforce.
So would we move the workforce action to this one? Where we have the workforce plan? I just lost my.
Where is?
Oh, was it resiliency?
Yeah, I think it was under resiliency. Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So would you propose that the workforce resiliency plan goes into stewardship, or would it stay here, or would you in both places, which could get confusing? And yes, we did call it a human capital plan, and somebody nixed that along one of the reviews. And so we went to workforce resiliency plan. Thanks, James. We could go back to human capital plan.
So maybe, I'm not sure. So these, headings that say resiliency and then whatever's before it and after it, are they the same level of heading as what is DOT's responsibility? Because to me, they're different, right? These are actions, but
Mhm.
what is DOT's responsibility? Or as a steward of DOT, what is their responsibility? So to me, this workforce resiliency plan is an action, but whose responsibility is it to make sure that workforce? Can we go back to the responsibilities of DOT?
Well,
Let's just
so
look at
this
that
is
real.
right. So this is a resilient agency. So this is DOT saying, okay, what does our workforce need to look like in 5 years? So these are DOT actions.
Okay, so then let's go forward in this slide deck to where it talks about, keep going there. I mean, I don't know. To me, there is a piece around stewardship that's different, but maybe it's not. I don't know.
All right, we'll take a look at it. We'll run it by Eric and James and make sure we get that clarified
Yeah,
at
that's
least.
fine.
Yeah,
That's
okay.
Okay,
All right.
innovation.
We good, Holly? All right, transportation innovation. So this is just keeping up to speed on everything that we need. Again, we threw in the word workforce here. It's such a big issue. So don't do technology for technology's sake. Make sure it's improving safety and efficiency. Monitor innovative technology. Make sure you're staying ahead of it. And as new technology comes along, pay attention to interoperability so that whatever new technology is coming in, it can talk across modes and communicate. We did include broadband, support broadband connectivity. It's important as technology comes. A lot of this technology doesn't work without good internet access. And again, there's a lot of money for broadband. And so we want to make sure that that's addressed in here. Cybersecurity, that's pretty self-explanatory. The more data, the more technology, the more threats. Local mobility, this is really becoming an issue, probably more in the lower 48, but it will be coming to Alaska as our curbs have more demands, whether it's drone deliveries, whether it's autonomous vehicle ride hails, whether it's Uber and Lyft right now, and transit. So making sure that we're starting to think about how we design streets and curb management, looking into pilot projects, and then transportation system and management operations, starting to incorporate that into business. And again, looking at workforce and integrating technology.
Okay, Wendy, on the previous slide, Rebecca recommends calling out drones and ACA USI specifically.
Quasi.
Okay, what is that? I don't know what that is.
That's if you ask me to quote that, I'm gonna have to ask Jody. But essentially, Alaska is one of the test sites for drones. Nationally, we have a lot of testing and pilot studies up here for that. So calling that out on the LRTP on a high level would be very supportive for that for our state.
So it is in the base of the plan, but we did not call it out as an investment specifically, but we can do that. But we do discuss it in the plan. Yeah.
Yep, I know. And you've got
Okay.
pictures. You get a candy
Yes.
too, Wendy.
Yes, thank you. And we still welcome pictures. Todd, if we had some good congested roadways in Central Region with some good high quality pictures, we'd be grateful.
Okay. Anything else with the transportation innovation section? Okay.
All right, performance-based management. This is really, if you don't measure it, it doesn't matter. So this is looking at measuring outcomes. So we talked about the family plans earlier. Probably need some updating of the state legislation regarding planning statutes and regulations. They do get dated as new items come along. And then even standardizing the plans so that each of the plans that come out of the different regional areas and the different modes, they tie back to this long-range transportation plan, and they generally follow the same sort of template, which makes it easier for coordination, cross-alignment, and the public to understand.
So Wendy, Steve has his hand up. Steve,
Yeah,
do you
let's do
wanna-
Steve real quick.
Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, hey, good morning, guys. That last slide, it just sparked a little something in me that is worth mentioning, and I just don't know how to capture it. Because there is no focus on the port industry in state DOT, all of these cybersecurity related, performance-based management related metrics or policy statements that are being made here, we all have the same ones that we have to comply with. But what there is there's no mechanism for us to inform the state on what we're doing that may not jive with what they're doing, because they have control over everything but what the ports are doing with respect to cybersecurity and program management and cargo management, freight management, and on and on and on. So there's opportunity for disconnects, or there's opportunity for there to be more happening than anybody captures. And nobody even asks us what we're doing. So I don't know how to I don't know how to solve that. If the rule of thumb is, and I even got a chance to talk to Ryan at the Ports and Harbors Conference, which was held here in Anchorage last week. I'll bet nobody even knew that. DOT came to speak, and we all asked him about how come there's no deputy commissioner for ports and harbors. And it came, the focus is on, they focus on those areas where they get federal money to manage infrastructure projects on, and ports ain't one of them. So that's why there's really no, there's no mechanism for them to, unless you find somebody and you hire them that cares enough to ask, because they're looking at the big picture, the questions will never get asked. And we are, in our own little world down here, without a trigger to share what we're doing in all of these areas with respect to the overall transportation plan for the state. I don't know how we capture that.
Okay.
If it's a long-range transportation plan, how do we, at least get somebody in state DOT and remind them that, the port industry all by itself is doing a lot of these things for their own welfare. How do we let you know it's happening? And do you even care that it's happening? Because I'm seeing a lot of slides roll by here and I'm going, not applicable, not applicable, not applicable, not applicable, because there's no real port nexus with the state.
Right. Okay.
All right, thanks, Steve. Robert, go ahead.
Thanks. I just have to say I appreciate Stephen's comments as well. Coming from coastal communities, I think part of it is just that the state has divested itself of most of the assets. So not only does it not have the federal revenue streams to manage, they really don't have the assets to manage as much as they used to. There used to be a fairly robust personnel division for ports. So I support trying to find a way to strengthen that language. My question, though, had to do with just kind of I love the approach that you're doing with the family of plans, and I'm just kind of curious the relationship with the area plans, because I think it was the second slide when you were talking about the family plans. I remember seeing the STIP in there. I didn't see a call out for area plans. Maybe it was there and I missed it, but I just want to make sure that there was a strong nexus there. I do appreciate the call out for regional planning organizations, but I didn't really see the area plans listed on this. Did I miss it?
Oh, I think I called them local transportation plans in
Yeah,
this.
but that's
Yeah.
that's more like the community transportation plan. When I
Right.
see that, I'm thinking CTP. But so I think adding the area plans here might add that layer in there. So anyway, thanks.
And I like that. We can definitely just add area and local transportation plans. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Adam.
Yes, to Stephen's comment, I think we could capture some of that, and I think DOT and PF is supportive of capturing that. And I think the angle to do that is through, the cybersecurity issue, but multimodal as well, where if one mode is impacted by an issue, it does disrupt food security, it disrupts safety, it disrupts quality of life issues for across all modes, and that. What we would do is be taking a multimodal look at cybersecurity and the connections there, something along those lines. If we can input that, and I think the cybersecurity one is probably a place to maybe elaborate on that.
I think also, and Adam, Eric, and James, you can weigh in on this as well. But I think some data integration would be incredibly helpful between the Port DOT and the railroad, and a little bit more about sharing data and freight numbers and making that more seamless rather than having to chase it down from each organization, because it does affect, how much is going on the trucks on the road, how much is getting diverted, could trains make things more efficient, and that interconnectedness. So I think we could beef up the data sharing to be more specific, calling out with the ports and the Alaska Railroad.
Yeah, agreed. There.
Okay, good.
And aviation.
Well, you're already part of DOT.
Okay.
But yes, we'll beef all of that up.
Okay.
All right, funding and finance. Try to reduce reliance on federal funding. Always, it can be unstable, each new bill that gets passed. So always exploring new funding sources that are not federal. Continue to look at those ownership of facilities that are just really of local importance to local governments, so that the state's not maintaining smaller facilities that serve a more local versus a state need. And then improve and streamline DOT's financial records and reporting. So just a better, more transparency in the financial and standardization so that it's seamless across the modes and easier to share out and monitor. And then paperless project delivery, that could actually go under sustainability. But again, paperless reduces costs and improves the speed of project delivery. For strategic investments, a single source of truth. I think I stutter over that every time I say it. For statewide transportation data. And I think this is the one where we add rail and port and really try to find that seamless, if we would, kind of one-stop shopping for all data. That would save every agency a lot of time and a lot of money and be very transparent for the public. It's a challenge, but I think it's a worthwhile goal. Explore approaches for providing more stability in transportation investments. Again, more about innovative and cost-effective approaches to moving people and goods, thinking outside the box. I think Alaska is extremely good at this, and we just want to make sure we honor that. And a strategic investment plan as part of the family of plans. And that is really just taking a comprehensive look at everything and how are the finances going to be distributed.
Any discussion here? Okay.
So Holly, I think at this point we open it up to general comments on the LRTP. Speak now or forever hold your peace. Or at least till October 31st.
Right. Go ahead, Steve.
Boy, at the risk of getting my head bit off, could you go back to that slide where you had the reference to a port authority on it? It's almost at the beginning. Okay. My one caution here is establishing a statewide port authority is one of the many solutions to getting a little bit more community involvement by port industry, state port industry involvement in coming together and at least looking at things from a strategic planning point of view. There's no impetus to do that now. There's really no interest established in doing that now. So we tend to be duking it out with each other for attention from the legislature, for money from the legislature, or from the federal government for that matter. I wish there was a way to say this other than saying a port authority is called for to solve the problem. I don't think that's necessarily the case. Some forum where ports can formally get together every year in the context of the statewide transportation industry and just kind of talk about how things can be made better is probably a better solution in the near term than establishing a port authority, because now you have a political entity. Somebody's got to get appointed to be the head of it. 9 times out of 10, they don't have a clue what they're doing, and on and on and on. But there is a wealth of information on how to run ports statewide that has no forum to come together to talk about commerce. When we got together last week, it was very harbor centric. It tends to be very harbor centric because there's way more of those than there are ports, and a lot of the commercial movement of goods in the state are done by carriers who are private sector companies on leased property from the communities they serve. So they don't play in this role here. You can't even tell them what to do in this role here to some degree. So to say we need a port authority or establish a port authority as the only possible solution takes away some flexibility in how this can be done.
So
does that make any sense?
It totally makes sense. And I'm just going to kind of think on the fly here a little bit, but I look at Portland, for example. Portland has a port authority, but it includes air, aviation. That's the same thing.
Seattle the same
rail,
way.
And ports.
Yeah.
So
and Seattle
I think
is exactly the same way.
I like, and this isn't the right term, but I think Brian would probably agree with this, and so would Jody, who's got her hand up. But maybe it's called a commerce authority. I mean, that's not the right term, but it's where we're getting, Alaska trucking, we're getting aviation, we're getting rail, and they're getting together and they're talking about, like you said, moving of commerce. And I'm sure I can find a better name than commerce authority is a bad word, but something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I wish I could help you.
Any other thoughts on revising this one to be more comprehensive?
Jody has her hand up. I'm assuming it's related. Go ahead, Jody.
It is. And just specific to marine, Steve, way back in the day, I forget which governor established an aviation authority, and Lee Ryan leads that authority, and it was set up as an advisory board to the governor. And I wonder if maybe we should propose something like that for ports and marine. And
well, Adam just weighed in and he wants to call it the Intermodal Transportation Authority, which is so much better than what I came up with. Thank you, Adam, while I was trying to think on the fly. Something like that. Yeah.
This is the Aviation Advisory Board is set up within the construct of the state. So while the Intermodal Transportation Authority, I like that name too. I don't know if that gets set up outside, right? If that involves legislation, like that's a longer term goal, but this advisory board could potentially be a shorter term goal that could basically be set up through an executive order if the governor felt it worthy.
Well, I tell you, we could certainly support something like that as a step in the right direction. I mean, authorities are, you know, are a challenge. You know, how are they comprised? Are they appointed by the governor? In some places, they're elected positions. Just depends on how the you know, how the governance structure is put in place. But to start with something as you know, as simple as a committee of the interested and those involved, you know, getting together and forcing the issue of discussing commerce in this state as a transportation system, as opposed to, you know, fiefdoms doing battle with each other for their own, you know, for their own good, would be a wonderful step in the right direction.
Yeah.
Great discussion. Thank you. All right. Intermodal, any objection to us revising this to Intermodal Advisory Board, reflecting this discussion? I see no objection. That motion passes. Great, thank you. Good discussion. Great clarification.
You didn't get a second.
You didn't. Second, Brian?
Second.
Robert, thank you. All right, any other just overall LRTP comments? Who have we not heard from, Holly?
Well, a lot of people. I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but I just want everyone to know that this is your time, no matter if it's a small thing or a big thing. You can bring it here. Anyone else?
Hey, this is Lee. How you guys doing?
Good,
I
thanks,
almost
Lee.
called on you, Lee, but
I don't have anything overly involved on these particular slides, but there was a slide, I think, in the public review draft, maybe. I don't remember exactly where it was, but it was ports and waterways, and I believe the Alaska Marine Highway System kind of ended in going around Homer to Anchorage without showing the highway portion, Marine Highway, Kodiak, and then down the chain. I just felt like that graphic potentially was misleading. It may be just misleading in the sense that it's missing that Aleutian portion.
Yeah, let me double check that. I thought that we had fixed that at one point, but I will definitely double check on that. I would agree with that.
Well, Wendy, remember
think
also that, oh, go ahead, Lee.
Go ahead. Oh, sorry, Mark. I think the Marine Highway slide might have showed it, but the ports and waterways one didn't show it. It seemed like the visual was choppy between those ones. And I'm gonna try to pull it up, but
Yeah, I'm pulling it up too.
Remember also there's a marine highway system designated by MARAD that does just end at the inlet, right? It just goes up into the inlet. So maybe that's what you're thinking of, Lee.
it might be. And if that's the case, just clarifying.
Yeah,
the two.
regardless, we'll double check and we'll make sure
Yeah.
that it's correct in the final. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That was really the only comment I had. I liked everybody else's comments today. And it was more just a visual thing that just misled, and it might have just misled me.
Well, if it did mislead you, we need to at least add a footnote or some clarification. So I appreciate that comment. Yeah.
Otherwise, you guys did a lot of work. Thanks.
go ahead, James.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, and good morning, everyone. Thank you, Wendy and Holly and everyone. I've tried to intentionally not speak up. I wanted this process to take due course. But kind of dovetailing off of what Jody said, this has been the intent the whole time is to try to get as much input as possible and truly make it a vision for the state for all modes. So this is your input is incredibly important, and I was dialing into the Freight Advisory Committee and some of the comments by Brian on why aren't we looking at the railroad and things like that. And very often, at least historically, there's been a tendency to get myopic, and this plan is serving a purpose. We were trying to program NHFP funds, but these plans are more than that and can affect more than that. So I just greatly appreciate all the input, and we need to make this truly important. The other piece to that is kind of dovetailing off of what Robert said in the area plans. That's the next step. So this document, once it's completed, is going to trigger a cascade of updates to modal plans, system plans, area plans. They might not be wholesale rewrites, but they will be updates to make sure that those are aligned with all this. The overarching picture here is that all of these things, we're creating a hierarchy of plans that support each other, that work with each other, and really drive, at the end of the day, how we're doing what we do, what we're investing in, and how we're working with each other, among other things. So, big thanks to this whole team and the Freight Advisory team. This is really going to set us up for making some change in the years to come.
Yeah, thanks, James, and thanks to all of you. I mean, this is a collaborative process. A consultant can only do so much on their own, and we're going to miss some things. And so it's these dialogues that makes it your plan and that makes it better. And so we appreciate that. All right, is that it, team? So again, the plan's available. Holly, I think, put a post in the meeting chat. I just, again, a plug, if you can get people to provide comments, that would be great. Get people to look at the web page so that we know everyone's been viewing it. Holly continues to push the message out to the more rural parts of our state, trying to get people to engage. It's a lot. It's hard for people to wrap their brain around, but if you can talk to people and get the word out, that would be wonderful. And again, comments are due October 31st. We hope to wrap it up by the end of this year. And we will also be wrapping up the freight plan here shortly and addressing those comments. And you can always reach out to myself, Eric, or Holly with additional questions, comments, or thoughts. And we're happy to walk through the plan with any of you. So I guess, Holly, is that good? Any more hands, questions, last chance?
Just that Nils is late.
He's kind of
super late.
Super late.
So, I could have extended this whole thing another hour if I had been on, and I wanted to save you from me.
So we'll get your written comments, Nils. Is that what I'm hearing?
I'm at page 23 right now, so yeah.
23 pages of comments. Ouch.
I know, huh? No, we'll get you something for sure. Thanks.
All right. So what I posted in the chat is the place to comment. When you go to that link, there's also access to more of a publicly digestible version of the plan, so that it's a story map and it leads people through the same sort of discussion that Wendy just went through. Also, and the last thing I'm going to put in the chat for you all right now, and then we're going to let you go, is the website that has all the documents. I feel like this this link is too much for the public. The public doesn't have this much time, right? But you all do. So this is where the documents to both the draft long range transportation plan and the draft freight plan are there. Okay. All right. And we're here if you need anything.
And just one other quick thing, we did meet with the Freight Advisory Committee last week and reviewed the freight plan with them and are making some adjustments on that as well. So. And then we will be meeting with AMATS and fast planning in the next couple of weeks.
All right. Thanks, everyone. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Nice job, Holly and Wendy.
Thanks so much, Mark.
Second
Have a
that.
good rest of your day.
See ya.